Hi guys, Paul from Four Drive here. So this video today is going to be sort of like a really short and to the point unboxing combined with how to actually put the gear together. And we're going to mash those two together and actually go out and foil this gear right now with the lads. We're going to go and do a 15K downwind run, literally gear straight out of the box. The only caveat to that is I've had the chance to charge my battery. Other than that, I'm building everything out of the case, putting it on my board, running the mast and wings that have turned up in the post, and we're sending it for a downwind run. So let's get into it. Okay, so now we're going to go through what's in the case. So I've bought technically a Max here, and in the Max kit you've got the main unit, which is where everything happens, and you've got the two nose cones. So today, because I like to err on the side of caution, I'm running the Max and the power battery, the biggest one. I don't really need it, conditions are amazing, but you know, you can never have enough energy, and to be honest, I love finishing a run with plenty of gas in the tank. So what I'm going to do is go through the gear. So we've got, as I said, the main unit, we've got the two nose cones, so the large and the smaller nose cone. It comes with the battery charger that you'll need. I've already used this and charged up my pack. Underneath the charger, we've got tools that everything you will need to literally install on your board. So I've got a T30 and a T40. The pick tool, we don't need that for today, that's for cleaning of the gear, and the 2.5mm Allen key for doing up the pod. So they're my three tools that I'll be using. What else have we got? We've got the very important part, the motor. So I'm running a 15cm cable motor today because I like to get the motor really close up under the board. So we're going to bolt that on. And we've got pre-packed in the kit, because I'm simulating a customer ordering one, the code foil inner sleeve for the pod. So there's each kit comes with the long and the short nose cones for any mast, but today I'll be using the long nose cone, the rear, and the inner sleeve for code foils. So I'm going to show you how to install that. I've got my controller and very important battery grease, which I need for waterproofing the battery terminals. There's a few other little things like spare latches, spare pins, spare O-rings, spare bolts, all the spares that you might need. I don't need this today, but it's in the kit if you ever need it. And we are also supplying with the kit T-nuts, which is super helpful. It'll make sense why we use them when we're putting the unit on. And in the kit, it comes with the bolts that I need to install on the unit. So it comes with M8 and M6s, which will pretty much cover most brands out there. All right, so let's get into actually installing this gear. I think I've gone through what's in the kit. That's everything, and then my battery. So let's get this thing on the board. Okay, so first step is getting the T-nuts out of your kit. So they come with M8 and M6. In the kit are the actual T-nuts themselves, and these 20mm long stainless steel M3 bolts. These bolts are designed to thread into the T-nut, and it allows you to lock the T-nut in the track of the board so that every time you go to put your kit on, the bolts always line up. Makes life so much easier. I highly recommend you use them. So to do that, I've put the bolts in here, and I'm going to put them in the tracks. Get mine on my bolt, move it in. Another one goes that way. That way. Should be reasonably obvious, but there is a flange on the T-nut which needs to go upside down and into the board. Cool. If the T-nut's not moving, you might have screwed this screw too far down and it's hitting the bottom of the track, so wind it out and it should be able to move. Okay, so now the next step, I want to get my bolts and I want to get my mast to give me the spacing, the necessary spacing for the mast and the T-nuts on my board. So the way I'm going to do that, always clean the bottom of your mast first because there's probably sand on it. And then I simply come over, put the mast next to the T-nuts and try and roughly line them up to the spacing and the position that I want to run this on the board. I'm just going to go sort of mid-tracks for today, keep it simple. And then I put the mast on top of the board, and then with the bolts, I just want to make sure that I can see the holes So I'm just using, you can either use a bolt or the tool, and I'm just poking the tool into the track and just making sure that the holes in the T-nuts line up perfectly with the holes in the mast. Now I've done that. Now the next step is you want to lock the T-nuts in place. So I actually get a bolt, an 8mm bolt, and I push it into the T-nut so it doesn't move. And then I get this tool and I just lock it in place. The reason I use the M8 bolt is because it just helps the T-nut from moving when I'm trying to get this other small tool in the mix. Because if you push on the tool and you accidentally flick it, it's going to be out of alignment. So again, big bolt, just hold it in place. These 20mm M3 screws, you don't need to do them up super tight, they just sort of nip up a little bit. And what that does is it prevents the T-nut from being able to slide backwards and forwards, and then you end up with perfect alignment for your bolts later on. All right. That's actually probably one of the trickiest, most time-consuming parts of the entire thing. So, got my T-nuts in place. Okay, so the next step, not everyone needs to do this. Assume this isn't a carbon fiber board, it's a fiberglass, so it just works really well. But if you do have a real full carbon fiber board, sometimes you need to use the included high density foam blocks, and you just want to stuff them into the voids between your T-nuts. And this just helps with the signal propagation through the board and gives you a better link from the remote control to the unit. The more foam you can stuff in, the better the reception will be. So I've just put in 2 pieces here. And if you come in, you can see that there's still little gaps in the front here. I could take another piece of foam, cut it in half and stuff that in there to, again, fill up those voids. You won't necessarily need to do this on all boards. It's really for the high carbon fiber, full wrap boards. It just gives that little bit of extra performance. Okay, cool. So now I'm gonna get the main housing. And because I've used those super handy T-nuts, everything's gonna line up. Take off my motor protecting plug, which is really just there to protect the plug and keep the O-ring in place. And now I'm gonna get my mast, put it on top of the unit, and then I get my 4 bolts. These are M8 80mm long for the max, and I want to put them in through the unit, and with just my fingers I should be able to feel the bolt line up perfectly with that thread, just like a glove. Perfect. Trying to do this without T-nuts is really annoying because the T-nuts will move and you end up wasting all this time. Provided in the kit, T40 driver. I want to just loosely nip up those bolts. Don't go full torque straight away, just nip them up loosely so that the box can seat evenly. The reason I didn't torque these up, I just got them in loosely, is I want to make sure I can see the plug for where the motor goes into has got enough space to fit. And this is another reason why I ran the code today. It has quite a big base, super strong mast, but it has a very big base. And if you look down here, you can see if I was to try and plug the motor cable in, the base is in the way. That's why there's slots in the main unit. So if I was to push the unit back and bring the mast further forward, now I've got sufficient space to plug the motor cable in. So I'm going to take these 3 M4 10mm long stainless steel bolts out, and now I can put my motor plug, I want to push that into there, but super important, I want to use some of the foil drive battery grease on the plug. And the reason this is super important is that if any moisture or salt or anything like that ever got in here, By using that battery grease, it adds that protective layer between the pins, the gold pins, and you won't get any corrosion. So always use your battery grease. So I'm just going to plug that in like that, push it down nice and neatly, and then I'm going to put those 3 screws back in so that my motor is fully locked in place, ready to go. Try and do them up evenly so you're not having the plug tilt. All right, now I'm going to tighten them up. Just finger tight, you don't need to go crazy. That O-ring will squish. That blue O-ring has to be there. Now that's ready to rock and roll. So now I've got my mast and my box in place and everything's seated. I will then just do the last nip up of those bolts so that the mast and the box can't move under load. So next step is getting the pod onto the mast. In the kit there's a bag that'll be stuffed inside the pod. It's got all the screws that you'll need. So the first ones I want are the M3x12s. We want 4 of them. You want some black electrical tape and some scissors, make life a little easier. And what we're going to do is we're going to put the pod on the mast. Once you've done this a few times, you can almost just leave it on. It makes life a lot quicker and there's a lot less hassle. First things first, I'm going to take the sleeves out of the pod, which are the 3D printed sleeves. You want to put them together, and I've got this wrong. Put it together like that. And I want the numbers, hashtag numbers, to be facing me, not inverted. And I also want to take note that written on the side of the pod, it says base plate with an arrow. For carbon tapered masts, these inner sleeves are directional. So base plate arrows, I want to turn this upside down so that, guess what? It's facing the base plate. So I'm going to put that on just roughly wherever I want it for now. I got the nose cone, I got the rear. There's no direction on the nose cone, but there is a direction on the rear. The square cutout, you want to have that facing the board. So we're going to rotate that and we're going to put that on like that. There are, as I said before, 4 M312 screws. They need to go into the rear of the pod so you can join it up. So I'm just going to put them in now. 1, 2, 3, 4. Going to bring that around to the back, slide it on, and just get it roughly seated for now. Because what I need to do first, before I do it up, is just make sure my motor's going to be at the right height for the pod. So I've grabbed the motor, I'm going to slide it into the rear of the pod. And now I'm just going to adjust the pod position roughly to where I want it. And I want it about there. Something like that. Okay, cool. I can take that back out. I've got my pod in position. And now I put the 2.5mm driver into the back of the pod. And I want to just do up the screws gently so that I can get the 2 halves to engage. Don't do one bolt all the way up the first time. You want to do them a little bit at a time so they pull in evenly. So I've got all 4 engaged now. And then I will do them up evenly so that the pod halves pull together. It's okay to have a gap between the pod halves. Tapered masts, that is necessary. As the taper goes down this way, the gap reduces. As you push it this way, the gap increases. The gap allows there to be clamping force. If there's no gap, it wouldn't work. So I've now done those up. And the gap looks, yep, nice and even. You just wouldn't want the pod looking like this. You want it nice and straight. Again, just finger tight for those bolts. You don't need to be reef on it, just finger tight. Pod, I'm going to slide it in, make sure it still fits. Beautiful. So now we've got that on, there's 3 more M312 bolts. They need to go in the pod to secure your motor to the pod. So I put the top one in, and it should just be able to thread in with fingers. You should never need to force it. If you're having to force it, something's not lined up and it's not going to go in well. So again, should just be able to do it with your fingers. Super easy. Now that all 3 of them are in there, I'm just going to nip them up Finger tight again, not crazy tight, doesn't need to be. Cool, now my motor's locked in place, nice and sturdy. The next thing is cable guide. I'm just going to measure the cable guide on the back of my mast, and I'm going to cut a strip to put behind this bit for slightly better hydrodynamic performance. So about that. Cut it with scissors, beautiful. Then I'm just going to move the cable guide out the way, well, the cable out the way, and push that in place. You can do this before you put the motor on as well. There's no real right or wrong. And if you come in and get a nice close shot, we can see we've got a motor and cable taking the contour of the mast. It looks nice and neat. Got a cable guide in there which fills in a void for hydrodynamic performance, and it's ready to go. The next step, and this is overlooked by a lot of people, is spend some time doing a nice tape job. I know it sounds silly that you're using tape, but it is the best way to fill all the little gaps to prevent water wanting to flow into all these little areas. You want a nice smooth surface for best hydrodynamic performance. So I'm going to start the tape on the leading edge, and this black electrical tape works really well for this because it's got a little bit of stretch to it. I'm going to pull it over this side, and I'm just taking the time to keep it smooth. Another wrap down here. There we go. You don't need to go all the way down here, just to the base of the cable. Snip that off. Make sure the last bit of tape overlaps and heads back that way so the water doesn't want to open it up. Our motor is installed on our mast, our box is on the board. We are so close to getting the water, I can almost taste it. Battery time, nose cone time, remote controller. First of all, I want to put my little lanyard on my controller. I don't want to lose this. They will float, kind of, but in the ocean, you'll lose it. So you feed the loop through the little triangle bit at the bottom, and then you've got your lanyard ready to go. Next thing I want to do is get my battery. Here it is. And super crucial, we want to put the 4-drive battery grease on the front of the battery cell so that it has protection, and because I'm going in the salt water, and it's just a safety backup. So what I want to do is get the tube, and I'm going to put a smear of that right across the terminals of the battery, and that is going to give it amazing protection. Take the stubby cooler off. I can see my propellers, motor spins freely. I'm now not going to touch that. I'm going to turn my controller on. Little screen comes up, and then I'm going to grab this, put it in the front of the box, and I'm just going to gently slide it all the way in. Clunk, it's now connected. Before I put the lid on, I just always look down the center line of the box and I make sure my blue O-ring's in place. I can see it's there, it's bright blue. Fantastic. I've got my nose cone now. I simply slide it over the front, open the latches, push it all the way in, close this latch and this latch, and then I want to click both latches shut. This nose cone is now in place. It's super solid, it's not going to go anywhere, and I want to make sure that everything looks flat on the board, which it is. Okay, so we've just installed everything on the board. This is obviously the first time it's come out of the packet. After you've done this the first time, there's all sorts of tasks you don't need to do again, so it's normally a lot quicker. But the nose cone's on, battery's plugged in, I've turned my controller on, it should be pre-bound from factory. Stay away from the prop and you just want to test it. It's ready to rock and roll. Awesome. Safety note, whenever you're handling this thing and you are not in the water about to run, press and hold the power button and turn it off and check that it doesn't run before you handle this board. Cool, we're done. We're ready to go. We're ready to get in the ocean and go for a downwinder. I'm running the Code Foil 85cm mast, and I'm running the 1130S wing and 158 tail. Never ridden this gear before, but it's just turned up in the post, so super stoked to give it a go. On a 5.0 Jimmy Lewis prone board, 38 litres by 19 1/4. Not what you would typically associate with a downwind board, but with the new Gen2, you can kind of ride whatever you want, and I just love riding small boards and enjoying the ocean. So that's enough from me. We're going to go and enjoy the product that we've been spending years making, and these lads have been waiting very patiently for me to stop rabbiting on and get in the water. So enjoy your unit. You've obviously got one. Have fun.